Merħba, rġenna ltqajna għal programmi L-Intrapriża. Fl-aħħar programmi tkellimna kemm il-darba fuq startups li jibdew il-vjaġġ tagħhom biex jiżviluppaw u jikbru. L-ekosistema tal-startups Malta kull ma tmur qiegħda dejjem tikber u qed iġġib magħha tibdil fil-mod ta' kif titħaddem intrapriża, speċjalment meta daw ikunu għadhom fil-bidu tagħhom. Normalment daw l-startups ma tarhomx jaħdmu minn xi uffiċċji kbar jew boardrooms imma x'aktarx jaħdmu minn kmamar żgħar jew xi inkubatur organizzat biex jgħinhom fil-bidu tal-iżvilupp. Il-fundaturi x'aktarx ikunu persuni li ikollhom idea u jkunu esperti fil-qasam partikolari tagħhom, imma mhux neċessarjament ikollhom esperjenza biex jimmaniġjaw il-komplessità ta' organizzazzjoni bħalma intrapriża. Uħud ikunu imprendituri naturali u oħrajn ikollhom bżonn ta' għajnuna biex jiżviluppaw din il-kwalità importanti. Illum se nżuru kumpanija illi topera fis-settur tal-edtech billi tgħin fundaturi ta' startups, speċjalment nisa, biex jibnu l-esperjenza, jiddiskutu l-proċessi ta' żvilupp, l-implikazzjonijiet legali, kif imexxu l-kumpanija tagħhom, u dan jagħmluh f'atmosfera rilassata u bl-użu tal-lob virtwali li jservi ta' simulatur. Niltaqgħu mal-kap eżekuttiv ta' Female Switch, Violetta Bonenkamp, u kollegi oħra tagħha. Hi Violetta, thanks for having us. Female Switch, how did it start off and what is exactly its line of business?
Well, it's a long story. Let me try to make it short. Well, as you might already know, we are a startup that is originally coming from the Netherlands, and back then, during the pandemic, there was a call from the Dutch government. They said that they were desperately looking to get more women into startups, into technological startups. And we realized that we are exactly what they want, because we are a startup with a female CEO, with a very good gender diversity, among other things, and we decided to apply because we thought that we could actually give our perspective to that. So we applied and we didn't get it. And at that moment, of course, as real entrepreneurs, we were like, we're gonna build it anyway because we kind of like the idea. So as you might imagine, during the pandemic, the time was not the best for startups, and our team was also feeling a bit low. You couldn't go out, you couldn't attend events, you couldn't talk to people. So we decided that building this gamified ecosystem for entrepreneurs to enter the startup world was something that we could afford to spend some time on, and we decided to bootstrap, despite the fact that we didn't get the funding from that call, because we believed in the whole idea, and we also thought as entrepreneurs giving up is not really an option, and we did build it. We built it even quicker than we were supposed to according to the conditions of the application, and we ran the first pilots, and that's when we saw how interested women were in what we were building. So, and that's of course for any startup, that's the time when you're like, you have something. So it's not about building something that you like, but it's about people coming and telling you, wonderful. So that's how it originated. We ran a couple of pilots after that, iterating, building a bit more. And one of the most important things that we like to do in the game, and we like to teach the women to do, is to use tools that are called zero code, low code, no code, which is basically a way to build software without traditional coding, which means that the level of people who can enter this is quite low, and we can teach women how to do this. And this is our methodology slash, I would even say a bit of our religion, to show that women, are great entrepreneurs because we have what it takes for things like networking, and B, the technical part is getting easier and easier because of the technological advancements.
I'm actually enjoying this really nice environment. How
Yes.
important is it for you to conduct your work?
Very important. So from a small office in the Netherlands where the Dutch should forgive me, but the weather is not the same as here. So when we had that opportunity, which was also during the pandemic, to come here, I immediately said yes, even without thinking about all the business implications of that. and I immediately knew that we wanted to work from home. And I must say, the first year when I was here, my energy level was so different from the one in the Netherlands. In the Netherlands, I would never wake up and start working immediately. Here, 5 a.m., I'm here on the terrace, meeting the sunrise and already working. So it's also very good for my productivity as an entrepreneur. And that's when my philosophy also started changing towards something that I call happy entrepreneurship. We, of course, also thought that we wanted a lot of networking to be done. In order to invite more women into entrepreneurship, you need to show them how it is. An online game is one thing, but when they come here and they get to pitch by the pool, so both men and women, we don't do just...
You don't discriminate,
no,
basically.
No,
But obviously you have a preference for encouraging more female participation.
Yes, and the answer to that is twofold. First of all, we do need more women in entrepreneurship, just because diverse teams do perform better, statistically, that's for sure. And I do strongly believe that women make great entrepreneurs, that's for sure.
So basically, through this game, you are helping founders of potential new startups to develop their own entrepreneurial skills. But how effectively, how does it work?
Well, we have this concept that I like a lot, and we call it inner entrepreneur. We think that pretty much every person has a seed of a tiny entrepreneur living inside of them. And the game does exactly that. It helps to water that seed, and the person grows into a bigger entrepreneur. Of course, there are those that are not entrepreneurs. They are not going to enjoy this lifestyle in which you're always on a roller coaster. And for them, there is something in the female switch game as well. They can upgrade their CV and they can get hired by a company because we want to partner with companies later on, or they can get hired by a startup that is going to be formed while the girls are playing the game. In the game, the girls can win different prizes, and let me refer to this t-shirt as an example of that. We like to give them memorable experience. So this t-shirt tells a story of human life. We as humans like to what we call whine, so complain and blame someone else for everything that's happening to us, but essentially we are in charge of who we are and where we are, and the game is here to help you with exactly that. Of course, it is hard work, but there has to be also some enjoyment. That's why the wine is here to symbolize that, and that's how the game helps to transform women from someone who is whining to someone who is winning. And I think this is the best way to explain the game in a couple of sentences.
And being a mean CEO, that would be a story for next time.
You saw that one, yes. I call myself mean CEO, but it's a long story. In the game, the idea is that there is a bit of a sandbox. So we kind of control the perimeter, but inside that perimeter they can do anything they want. It's a bit of the almost no rules environment, except of course there are rules because they do exist in the startup world, and by making them go through certain hurdles, we kind of train their startup muscle so that when they go into the real world, they have that in the back of their heads. And one of those things that they absolutely hate, but it needs to be done, is the legal part. So when they form a game, for example, or when they start interacting with someone who plays as an investor or mentor, they have to sign some sort of a legal agreement. It can be a shareholders agreement, for example, and that gives them an understanding of how important these things are, for example, right? But other than that, they can do what they want. There are things that they can learn depending on what interests them now. There are games, quests that they can go through, once again, depending on what they like and what they feel they will benefit from most. And I think this is a way for us and for them to understand what kind of a person they are. During the pilots, we've noticed that some people who are true leaders, they want to become CEOs of their company, they're very proactive, they like competition, they get thrill out of quests and these things, and you can quickly see them. Then there are others that are, in general, more introverted, and they make great technical people. And of course, you immediately see how these things work in the game, and I think It's also important for the girls themselves to realize what kind of a person they are, the kind of self-awareness. We do a lot of exercises for them to start thinking about these things.
So you're mentioning the team now. Every member of your team has a specific role. Can we discuss this and elaborate on this?
Sure. The answer to that is twofold, because in the beginning stages of a startup, they say that you need to get generalists on board. So not specialists. Specialists are going to be extremely important later on. Generalist, it means that you are able to do pretty much everything. And that's the first thing I say to people when we hire. I said, if you like plans and you think sticking to plans is something that drives you, this is not the stage where we are at, because every morning we wake up and something changes and we have to alter our
routine. You have to do it hands-on and deal with it there and then.
But of course, in general, there are these groups of people that you ideally have. Of course, there's something that is technical and builds stuff and then fixes stuff when we break it. And then for us, for our startup, it turned out that we had someone who is legal on the team from the very beginning, which is very unusual in our world of startups, because lawyers are extremely expensive and there are not that many of them that actually like startups, because too much risk. Corporations are easier.
Initial stages.
But for me, it turned out like this, and I met someone who I'm now married to, and that person back in the day became our chief legal officer. And of course, that was very important because the proposition that we had back in the day with our first startup is legal tech. So of course, legal was essential for us, tech was essential for us. Someone who can talk, someone who can go on stage and present and pitch. Mistakes are great and vital for entrepreneurs, and that's how we learn, but there is one type of a mistake that I'd rather the girls did in the game and not in real life, because it's going to cost you not only a lot of money, but you can also lose your company, and that's of course legal mistakes. So I think our Chief Legal Officer, Dirk-Jan over here, is more qualified to discuss these things and explain a bit why legal is so important.
Yeah, well, what you see is that when people start to start their entrepreneurship, they're basically busy with their idea. They're basically busy with their product and not with everything around that, because that's boring, and legal is boring.
Yep.
Shouldn't be, but it is. So people, they start with getting the company, but the shareholders agreement they forget. And the shareholders agreement you don't need at the beginning, because then you're all on the same page. But then later on, maybe someone wants to do something differently. And then what do? Who does the company belong to if you split up? Well, if you try to arrange it at that moment, it's usually going to be a fight. So you need to do that up front.
And that's why, like I mentioned previously, in the game we make them sign all sorts of agreement, including the shareholders, where they have to put a certain amount of tokens, the in-game tokens. You know, they go through the whole process, they learn these complicated terms, and the best part of it is that there is an actual lawyer that can answer all of their questions in the game. Conversations like this, of course, make you stressful, and that's part of building a startup. Everyone accepts the fact, but if you're always stressed, you go into burnout, so we don't want that, right? That's why we have this big aspect that we're building into the game, that's the physical and mental health, and we're going to also have some quests around it, so we want people to eat a bit of vegetables, drink water, and, you know, move around, and the island is perfect for that. So let's talk to the person who would know best about enjoying life, an Italian guy in our company. So this is Davide.
Nice
Officially, he is Chief Financial Officer, but unofficially he is Chief Food Officer.
Occasionally Chief Fun Officer.
No,
Occasionally.
There's another word that comes to mind, but go ahead.
But we're not going to share it here today. No, surely living in a villa with your team is surely unconventional, but so far has been bringing a great outcome, both on the living and working perspective. It's way easier to collaborate and communicate with each other, so definitely the work and all the process of creating ideas and building gets easier. but at the same time it creates an environment where there is less stress, because with the time you get to know each other, so therefore also the work is affected. There is no commute, so we avoid like traffic and maybe some stressful choices about some possible dress code that you might have in an office. So definitely this has been positive. Also, well, the environment here, the villa itself, just like the island, I think it brings lots of positive things as well, from the weather, the good food, and it's definitely good for both working and mental health, absolutely.
A lot of people think that the game is just a game, but no, this is the game that is the simulation of real life. It's something that you always have with you. You can build a real life startup in the game as well. So it's not, something, when you say game, some people, especially older generation, they think it's something, for entertainment. But this is something that's called a serious game, even though I don't like the word serious, because we like to have fun there as well. Yeah. But it's an educational, gamified simulator, if you will.
Thanks a lot and best of luck.
Yeah, thanks a lot.
Hawnhekk tassew qegħdin naraw kumpanija li l-istorja tagħha tant għandha faċċati differenti. L-ewwel nett għandna kumpanija li hija bbażata fl-Olanda illi għażlet li tkompli tikber permezz ta' pajjiżna fejn hawnhekk qed tagħmel xogħol mill-iktar avvanzat fil-kumpaniji differenti tagħhom bħala outputs partikolari. Rajna wkoll l-element ta' Violetta bħala female founder illi l-element femminili fit-tmexxija mhux qed iżommu biss għall-istorja tagħha imma qed toħorġu l-barra fejn qed tressaq lejha co-founders jew founders femminili oħrajn u tihom l-għodot kollha possibbli permezz tal-kunċett ta' gamification u anki l-użu ta' l-aħħar teknoloġija sabiex tagħmel it-triq il quddiem għal dawn l-imprenditori ġodda kemm jista' jkun iktar faċli u iktar fattibbli. L-element ċar min-naħa tal-grupp kollu madwar Violetta illi huma parteċipi b'mod sħiħ fl-ekosistema tagħna, kemm permezz ta' Female Switch u anki bl-attivitajiet l-oħrajn kollha li parteċipaw ħafna fihom. Permezz ta' dan il-programm qegħdin nagħmluha iktar ċara lil dawn il-founders minn kumpaniji minn barra mill-Unjoni Ewropea li Malta tixtieq li jkunu fostna, nitkellmu fuq founders mill-Amerika, Renju Unit, Turkija, Iżrael, sabiex jiġu hawnhekk flimkien mal-familji tagħhom u speċjalment mal-ħaddiema l-iktar importanti għalihom li jiġu f'Malta intuhom ċertezza li qed ikunu f'pajjiżna b'mod regolari iżda wkoll għat-tul għax il-programm iħares lejn 3+5 years u hemmhekk ikun qed isir dan it-taħlit tant importanti, tant prezzjuż bejn il-kumpaniji Maltin, indiġeni Maltin u l-kumpaniji internazzjonali li jħolqu l-ġid f'Malta.
Wasalna fit-tmiem tal-programm imma bħas-soltu nagħtu ħarsa lejn il-kalendarju. Saħħa u sliem.